The morning sun cast long shadows across Naval Base Coronado, its golden light glinting off the windswept waters of the Pacific. Captain Jack Harmon stood at his office window, weathered hands clasped behind his back. At 65, his face bore the roadmap of 3 decades in naval special warfare. Deep lines etched by desert suns, Arctic winds, and countless missions that official records would never acknowledge. 4 stories below, sailors moved with purpose across the sprawling complex. Harmon's eyes still sharp despite the years tracked a solitary figure walking toward the mess hall. Lieutenant Catherine Kate Reynolds moved with the fluid efficiency that marked her as different, though few would notice. Average height, athletic but not imposingly so, with dark hair pulled back in regulation style. To the casual observer, she was just another naval officer. That invisibility was perhaps her greatest tactical advantage. Harmon's mind drifted to the classified file locked in his desk. Project Athena, the Pentagon's highly classified initiative to integrate women into the Navy's most elite combat units. Reynolds was its first and only graduate, a fact known to fewer than 20 people in the entire military hierarchy. The program's existence remained officially denied. "They're not ready for her," Harmon muttered to himself, a hint of anticipation in his voice. "But they damn well need to be." The morning briefing with his training cadre had confirmed what the aging warrior already knew. The 15 recruits arriving for advanced tactical operations training were exceptional by conventional standards. Top of their buds class, physically dominant, technically proficient. Pride and arrogance came with the territory. Every generation of special operations warriors believed themselves the pinnacle of evolution. Until they weren't. Harmon checked his watch, a Lumen Knox Navy SEAL 3001, the same model he'd worn during Operation Desert Storm. In precisely 3 hours, Lieutenant Reynolds would begin dismantling everything those young men thought they knew about combat capability. The corners of his mouth twitched upward in anticipation. Some lessons couldn't be taught through manuals. The mess hall buzzed with the controlled chaos of morning operations. Steam rose from serving trays while conversations about weekend liberty plans and upcoming training exercises filled the air. At a corner table near the windows, Lieutenant Reynolds sat alone, methodically consuming her breakfast while reviewing training protocols on her tablet. Her movements were economical, nothing wasted. 15 years earlier, during the darkest days in Fallujah, Harmon had watched an Iraqi sniper operate with the same mechanical precision. The memory made him shudder, not from fear but recognition. True predators rarely announce themselves. 3 tables away, a group of 15 newly arrived recruits gathered around their trays, their fresh haircuts and eager expressions, marking them as recent graduates from basic underwater demolition or SEAL training. They spoke in hushed, excited tones about their first real assignment, occasionally pointing toward various officers throughout the mess hall, while trying to guess their specialties in combat experience. "See that commander over there?" whispered recruit Martinez, nodding toward a burly officer with a thick beard. 3 combat deployments in Helmand Province. They say he personally eliminated 17 high-value targets. The others leaned in, their eyes wide with the particular reverence young warriors reserve for verified killers. These sailors had spent months dreaming of serving alongside genuine war heroes, and now found themselves surrounded by the quiet professionals who comprised America's most lethal maritime force. Ryan Collins, the unofficial leader of their group, scanned the room with eager eyes. The son of a decorated Marine General, Collins carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to excellence. His gaze eventually settled on Reynolds' table. "What about her?" he asked, gesturing discreetly toward the lieutenant. "Looks pretty young for an officer. Probably some desk job, intelligence analysis, or logistics support." The comment sparked immediate interest. The recruits began speculating about Reynolds' role, each offering their own theory with the certainty of men unaccustomed to doubt. "Medical officer," suggested Baker, a former college wrestler whose neck strained against his uniform collar. "They've been pushing more women into those support positions." Michael Wilson, who had served 3 tours with Army Rangers in Afghanistan before transferring to the Navy, snorted dismissively. "Whatever she is, I guarantee she's never seen actual combat. These military women are all procedure and protocol until the first shots are fired." Several others nodded in agreement, though a few looked uncomfortable with such sweeping generalizations about a superior officer. Their youth and inexperience showed in their assumptions, but their enthusiasm remained infectious. Reynolds remained oblivious to their discussion, her attention focused on preparing for the morning's evaluation exercises. Her tablet displayed complex tactical scenarios and equipment requisitions that would have shocked the observing recruits, but the screen remained angled away from prying eyes. Years of operational security had become second nature, extending into every aspect of her daily routine. Collins leaned back in his chair, confidence radiating from him like heat. My father says they're undermining unit cohesion with all these diversity initiatives. Special operations isn't about being inclusive, it's about being lethal. His companions murmured agreement, though Martinez looked less convinced. The youngest of the group, he came from 3 generations of Navy service and understood better than most that military effectiveness often came in unexpected packages. You can't judge capabilities by appearance, he offered cautiously. That's one of the first things they taught us in Buds. Wilson laughed, perhaps louder than necessary. Save that politically correct bullshit for your performance evaluation, Martinez. There are realities about physical capabilities that no amount of sensitivity training can change. The conversation drifted toward their upcoming assignment, speculation about which operational teams might select them after advanced training, and the combat deployments they all coveted. Their excitement was palpable, the intoxicating combination of youth elite training and untested confidence. Reynolds finished her meal and began gathering her materials, preparing to return to the training center. Her movements remained deliberate and controlled, betraying nothing of the lethal capability that had shaped her over 9 grueling years of specialized training. The small scar beneath her right ear and the slight calluses on her trigger finger might have provided clues to an experienced observer, but the recruits remained focused on their own conversations. As Reynolds stood to leave, her tablet slipped from her grasp, clattering to the floor beside her table. The device's protective case prevented damage, but the sound drew attention from nearby tables. Several recruits glanced in her direction as she bent to retrieve it. Smooth move. Wilson chuckled loud enough for his companions to hear, but hopefully not for Reynolds. Even the simple stuff trips up the desk jockeys. His comment earned a few nervous laughs, though Martinez shot him a warning glance. Reynolds heard the remark, her situational awareness extended to all corners of the room, but showed no reaction. Her expression remained neutral as she secured the tablet and headed toward the exit. From his vantage point 4 floors above, Captain Harmon watched Reynolds depart the mess hall. He'd witnessed the entire exchange through the polarized windows. The tablet drop hadn't been accidental. Reynolds never did anything without purpose. She had been taking their measure, gathering intelligence on the group dynamics that would prove useful in the very near future. And so it begins, Harmon murmured, turning away from the window. The morning sun had barely crested the horizon when Jack Harmon jerked awake, his heart hammering against his ribcage. The dream again. East Berlin, 1987. The safe house compromise. KGB operatives closing in from 3 directions. His 4-man SEAL team outgunned communications, jammed exfiltration route blocked. Then the unexpected salvation, the CIA asset codenamed Valkyrie. She had appeared seemingly from nowhere, eliminated 2 Russian operators with a suppressed Makarov PM, then guided them through a labyrinth of abandoned subway tunnels to safety. Only later did they discover she was a 5'4" linguist who had never fired a weapon in combat before that night. The incident had permanently altered Harmon's understanding of combat effectiveness. He swung his legs over the edge of his bed, rubbing weathered hands across his face. 38 years later, and the memory remained razor sharp. Those early Cold War operations had taught lessons that modern warfare continued to validate. Assumptions got operators killed. The digital clock on his nightstand read 0500. In precisely 3 hours, 15 of the Navy's most promising SEAL candidates would face a similar revelation. Lieutenant Reynolds had prepared meticulously for this evaluation, as she did everything. The young men from the mess hall were about to discover the dangerous folly of underestimating an opponent based on appearance. Harmon showered and dressed quickly, donning the khaki uniform that marked his senior officer status. His chest bore rows of service ribbons, silent testimony to decades of classified operations across 6 continents. The most significant medals remain locked in a safe too classified for public display. At precisely 0545, he entered the secure briefing room where Reynolds was already reviewing personnel files. She stood at his entrance, military protocol ingrained at the cellular level. "Good morning, Captain." she said, her voice carrying the particular calm that came only from absolute preparation. "Morning, Lieutenant. Sleep well?" Harmon asked, though he already knew the answer. Reynolds slept 4 hours nightly, the same routine since her initial selection for Project Athena. "Yes, sir." Completed final review of candidate profiles and optimized the evaluation sequence. She handed him a tablet containing 15 detailed dossiers each, highlighting strengths, weaknesses, and psychological profiles of the recruits they would evaluate today. Harmon studied the screen, nodding slightly. "Wilson will be your biggest challenge. 3 tours in Afghanistan, hand-to-hand combat experience, and significant bias against female operators based on his deployment history." Reynolds betrayed no emotion. His Army Ranger background gives him false confidence in close-quarters techniques. He telegraphs his right cross and has never encountered Systema counters. The observation revealed the extraordinary depth of her preparation. She had studied combat footage of each recruit, identifying tactical vulnerabilities that the men themselves weren't aware existed. The SecNav called yesterday. Harmon mentioned casually, referring to the Secretary of the Navy. Project Athena's congressional funding review is next month. They're looking for quantifiable results to justify the program's continuation. Reynolds nodded once, acknowledging the political reality without comment. 4 years and $38 million had produced exactly one female SEAL, herself. The program's critics within the Pentagon considered this proof of biological limitations. Its supporters viewed Reynolds as the prototype for a new generation of operators whose combat effectiveness transcended physical metrics. "And the DevGru request?" she asked, referring to the elite counterterrorism unit commonly known as SEAL Team 6. Harmon's expression darkened slightly. "Still pending. Admiral Chambers supports your transfer, but there's resistance at the Joint Chiefs level. Traditional thinking dies hard." Reynolds absorbed this information without visible disappointment. Her record spoke for itself. 7 classified operations in Syria, 9 confirmed eliminations of high-value targets, extraction of 3 captured intelligence officers under active fire conditions. No male operator with similar statistics would face such institutional hesitation. "Today's evaluation will help," Harmon added. "Nothing changes minds like direct demonstration." Reynolds permitted herself the slightest smile, a rarity that transformed her professional demeanor momentarily. "Then we should give them something memorable, sir." The formal training area at Naval Base Coronado gleamed in the morning sunlight. Designed specifically for advanced tactical instruction, the complex featured multiple combat simulation zones, from urban warfare environments to maritime assault courses. At precisely 0715, SEAL candidates assembled on the central parade ground, forming precise ranks as they awaited their instructors. Their expressions combined eagerness with the particular wariness that comes from surviving the Navy's most notorious training program. Buds eliminated approximately 75% of those who attempted it, creating a justified confidence in those who earned their tridents. These men represented the top 1% of an already elite cadre. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran with salt and pepper hair and forearms like steel cables, stood before them. Behind him waited several officers in standard Navy khakis, their faces professionally neutral. "Gentlemen," Rodriguez announced, his voice carrying across the courtyard with practiced authority, "welcome to Advanced Tactical Operations Training. Over the next 6 weeks, you'll be evaluated on combat readiness, strategic thinking, and operational adaptability under extreme pressure conditions." The recruits straightened their postures, excitement rippling through their formation. This represented exactly the opportunity they had endured hell to reach. "Your primary instructor for this rotation," Rodriguez continued, "is Lieutenant Reynolds. She will be conducting today's evaluation and assessment." He gestured toward the officers behind him, and Lieutenant Reynolds stepped forward, her expression professional and focused. Several recruits recognized her immediately from the previous evening's mess hall encounter. Wilson's face flushed slightly as he remembered his dismissive comments, while Collins maintained a carefully neutral expression. Captain Harmon stood at the periphery, observing the subtle reactions cascading through the formation. From his vantage point, the micro-expressions of shock, confusion, and disbelief were clearly visible. Reynolds might have been wearing standard-issue Navy khakis, but the trident insignia on her chest, the iconic emblem of the Navy SEALs, created the cognitive dissonance he had anticipated. Reynolds surveyed the assembled recruits with analytical precision. Her gaze lingered briefly on Wilson and Collins, though her expression revealed nothing about her awareness of their earlier conversation. This morning we'll begin with combat readiness assessment. Reynolds announced, her voice clear and authoritative. You'll demonstrate hand-to-hand combat techniques, weapons handling, and tactical decision-making under pressure. This evaluation will establish your baseline capabilities and identify areas requiring development. The emphasis on baseline capabilities sent a subtle message that none of them were finished products, regardless of their bud's completion or prior service. The concept visibly rankled several recruits, particularly Wilson, whose jaw muscles tightened noticeably. We'll start with individual combat assessment, Reynolds explained, indicating a padded training area surrounded by protective barriers. Each recruit will demonstrate close-quarters combat capabilities against a qualified opponent. She paused deliberately, allowing expectations to form in the minds of her audience. Most assumed a combat instructor, perhaps Chief Rodriguez or one of the burly petty officers standing nearby, would serve as their opponent. I'll be serving as your opponent for today's evaluation. The announcement triggered visible reactions throughout the formation. Several recruits exchanged uncertain glances, processing whether they had heard correctly. The idea of sparring against a female officer, even one wearing the trident, seemed unusual for SEAL training protocols. Collins raised his hand with careful military propriety. Ma'am, request clarification on evaluation parameters. The question was diplomatically phrased, but the underlying skepticism was evident to everyone present. Reynolds recognized the careful challenge for what it was, the first test of her authority. Full contact, recruit Collins. Standard CQC rules apply. The engagement ends with submission, incapacitation, or when I terminate the exercise. Her tone remained professional, but carried the unmistakable confidence of someone who had nothing to prove. Do you require additional clarification? Collins straightened. No, ma'am. Excellent, Reynolds continued. We'll proceed alphabetically. Recruit Anderson, you're first. Anderson approached the training mat with visible confidence. His 6'2" frame and obvious strength training gave him apparent advantages over his opponent. He had wrestled in college and performed exceptionally in Bud ECA's hand-to-hand combat training. The prospect of demonstrating his skills before his peers and superior officers clearly energized him. From the observation area, Harmon watched with the calm detachment of a man who already knew the outcome. He had witnessed Reynolds dismantle combat instructors twice her size during Athena's classified training phases. These recruits were about to receive an education that no training manual could provide. Reynolds moved to the center of the mat with fluid, economical motions. Her stance appeared relaxed and non-threatening, though experienced fighters would have recognized the deceptive nature of her positioning. Every aspect of her body language suggested complete comfort with the impending confrontation. The two combatants faced each other as Chief Rodriguez signaled the beginning of the match. Anderson immediately moved forward, attempting to use his size advantage to establish dominance through superior reach and strength. His technique was textbook, exactly as he'd been taught in Bud's training. What happened next fundamentally altered the atmosphere in the training facility. Anderson lunged with a controlled combination. Left jab followed by right cross designed to create opening for a takedown. Standard approach against a smaller opponent. His execution was technically sound, the product of thousands of training repetitions. Reynolds didn't retreat. She moved slightly offline, redirecting Anderson's forward momentum with minimal contact. Her right hand made brief contact with his leading arm, while her body pivoted 30 degrees. The subtle manipulation of biomechanics sent Anderson stumbling forward, suddenly off balance. Before he could recover, Reynolds executed a textbook hip throw that transformed Anderson's forward momentum into rotational energy. His 220-pound frame became weightless for a fraction of a second before impact with the training mat drove the air from his lungs. Reynolds maintained control of his wrist, transitioning seamlessly into a joint lock that produced immediate compliance. The entire exchange had lasted less than 4 seconds. Yield, Anderson gasped, tapping her forearm with his free hand. Reynolds released him immediately and stepped back to her original position. Her breathing remained unchanged, as if she'd done nothing more strenuous than check her watch. Anderson struggled to his feet, disbelief evident in his expression. The atmosphere among the observing recruits had transformed from skeptical curiosity to stunned silence. Next, Reynolds announced simply, Recruit Baker. Baker approached with considerably more caution than Anderson had shown. He had absorbed the lesson of his predecessor's defeat and attempted to adapt accordingly. Instead of rushing forward, he circled carefully, looking for openings while maintaining defensive positioning. Reynolds allowed Baker to establish his preferred distance, studying his movement patterns with clinical detachment. When Baker finally committed to an attack, a feint followed by a leg sweep, Reynolds countered with devastating efficiency. She stepped in on his guard, trapped his extended arm, and executed a joint manipulation that brought him to his knees within 2 seconds. "Tap out," Reynolds instructed calmly as Baker's face contorted with pain. He complied immediately and she released him without causing injury. The message had been delivered unequivocally. Resistance was futile against her superior technique and experience. One by one, the recruits stepped forward to face Reynolds. Each attempted different approaches based on observations of previous matches. Some tried speed, others relied on strength or wrestling techniques. None lasted more than a few seconds before finding themselves incapacitated or forced to submit. Reynolds employed different combat methodologies with each opponent, demonstrating mastery of judo throws, jiu-jitsu submissions, Krav Maga strikes, Systema counters, and MC MAP, Marine Corps martial arts program takedowns with equal proficiency. Each technique was executed with textbook precision and appropriate force levels. The psychological impact proved as significant as the physical demonstration. The recruits' worldview shifted fundamentally as they realized that their assumptions about combat hierarchy, fighting effectiveness, and personal capability had been completely wrong. The quiet officer from the mess hall possessed skills that surpassed anything they had imagined possible. When Wilson's turn arrived, his earlier bravado had evaporated entirely. He approached the mat with visible tension, knowing that his comments from the previous evening had likely reached their instructor through the base's efficient rumor mill. Reynolds engaged Wilson with the same professional demeanor she had shown every other recruit, neither displaying favoritism nor seeking retribution for his disrespect. Her attack came swiftly, a feint that drew his eyes downward, followed by a lightning-fast arm drag that compromised his balance. The subsequent sweep deposited him forcefully onto the mat before he could establish effective resistance. Wilson attempted to regain advantage through a defensive wrestling maneuver, his Army Ranger training evident in the technique. Reynolds countered with a precision application of pressure to his carotid artery, causing immediate compliance as blood flow to his brain diminished. "Yield." Wilson managed tapping her arm urgently. Reynolds released the hold instantly and stepped back, allowing him to recover. The entire exchange had demonstrated not just superior technique, but intimate knowledge of Wilson's specific fighting style and the precise counter needed to neutralize it. As Wilson rejoined the observers, several recruits began whispering among themselves. The reality of their situation was becoming undeniably clear. They weren't facing a regular naval officer or even a standard SEAL instructor. They were confronting someone whose capabilities suggested the very highest level of specialized training. Martinez, being one of the final recruits to face Reynolds, had the advantage of observing 13 previous defeats. He had studied her techniques intensely, looking for patterns or weaknesses that might provide an advantage. His analysis revealed flawless execution and complete tactical superiority that offered no exploitable vulnerabilities. When his turn came, Martinez decided on an unconventional approach that demonstrated why his tactical thinking had placed him near the top of his buds class. Instead of attempting to defeat Reynolds through combat, he approached the mat and immediately assumed a respectful position. "Ma'am, I request permission to yield before engagement. You have clearly demonstrated superior capabilities and further resistance would be pointless." Reynolds studied him for a moment before nodding approvingly. "Smart tactical assessment, Recruit Martinez. Sometimes the most important combat skill is recognizing when you're outmatched and adapting your approach accordingly." His decision earned respect from both instructor and peers. The final recruit followed Martinez's example, choosing discretion over futile resistance. They had witnessed enough to understand that challenging Reynolds further would serve no productive purpose. Their ego-driven desire to prove themselves had been replaced by genuine respect for superior expertise. From the observation area, Captain Harmon allowed himself a momentary smile. The demonstration had achieved exactly what he'd intended, a fundamental reset of the recruits' understanding of combat capability. Not a word had been spoken about Reynolds' gender or physical size. Actions had rendered such considerations irrelevant. As the combat assessments concluded, the 15 recruits stood in formation, their attitudes completely transformed from the previous day's arrogance and assumptions. They now faced an instructor whose capabilities demanded respect and whose authority had been established through undeniable demonstration, rather than mere rank insignia. Reynolds allowed the recruits a brief water break while preparing for the next phase of their assessment. The young sailors huddled together, their voices hushed as they processed what they had just experienced. Gone was the casual arrogance from the mess hall, replaced by nervous respect and growing curiosity about their instructor's background. "Where do you think she learned to fight like that?" whispered Baker, still rubbing his shoulder where Reynolds' joint lock had nearly dislocated his arm. "That wasn't regular SEAL training. I've never seen anything like those techniques." Wilson nodded grimly, his earlier comments about military women now seeming incredibly naive. "My brother's in Delta Force, did 2 tours in Syria. Even he doesn't move like that. She's something else entirely." The others murmured agreement, their military experience insufficient to categorize what they had witnessed. Chief Rodriguez observed their discussions with barely concealed amusement. He had seen this transformation countless times when new personnel encountered actual Tier 1 operators for the first time. The education was always humbling and invariably beneficial for young sailors who needed perspective. Captain Harmon approached Reynolds as she prepared the equipment for the next evaluation phase. "Effective demonstration, Lieutenant. I'd say the message was received." Reynolds nodded slightly, her focus already shifting to the team assessment portion of the day's activities. "Phase 1 complete, sir. Establishing physical dominance creates the psychological foundation for the subsequent leadership evaluation." Her clinical assessment of her own performance revealed the analytical mind that had made her so effective in combat operations. Reynolds viewed each interaction as a tactical engagement with specific objectives and measurable outcomes, whether on the battlefield or the training ground. Harmon glanced toward the recruits, noting their transformed body language and hushed conversations. "They're wondering who you really are now. Perfect setup for this afternoon's revelation." Reynolds permitted herself the slightest smile, not from pride but satisfaction in mission accomplishment. "Curiosity is a powerful motivator for learning, Captain." With that, she gathered her tablet and moved toward the assembled recruits, ready to initiate the next phase of an evaluation that would permanently alter their understanding of modern warfare and the people who waged it. The real lessons were just beginning. Reynolds returned to the training area carrying a large equipment bag and several tablet computers. Her demeanor remained professional and focus, showing no signs of fatigue, despite having just defeated 15 opponents in rapid succession. The recruits straightened automatically as she approached, their newfound respect manifesting in improved military bearing. "The combat assessment was preliminary," Reynolds announced, setting down her equipment. "Real special operations work requires more than individual fighting skills. We'll now evaluate your ability to function as a team under pressure while accomplishing specific tactical objectives." She gestured toward a complex obstacle course that had been prepared during their water break. The structure incorporated climbing walls, rope traverses, simulated building entries, and various problem-solving stations. Everything appeared designed to test both physical capabilities and mental adaptability under stress. "You have 45 minutes to navigate this course as a unit," Reynolds explained, consulting her tablet. "Along the way, you'll encounter 7 tactical scenarios requiring immediate decision-making and coordinated responses. Failure at any station results in time penalties and additional challenges." From his observation position, Captain Harmon watched the recruits study the course layout. Their expressions revealed recognition of its sophisticated design and realistic tactical elements. This exceeded anything they had encountered during BUD/EAS, incorporating features that suggested real-world mission requirements rather than simple physical fitness testing. "Your objective," Reynolds continued, "is to reach the final station and successfully extract a simulated casualty while under hostile observation. You'll be equipped with basic tactical gear and training weapons with simulated ammunition. Rules of engagement and safety protocols are outlined in your briefing packets." She distributed the materials while the recruits organized themselves into a functional unit. Collins emerged as their unofficial leader, his earlier embarrassment motivating him to prove his leadership capabilities. The group quickly established roles based on individual strengths and previous military training. Reynolds activated a timer on her tablet. "Time starts now. Remember, this is not individual competition, but team evaluation. Your success depends entirely on cooperation and tactical thinking under pressure. The recruits moved out immediately, their recent combat defeats having taught them to take Reynolds' instructions seriously. They approached the first obstacle with careful coordination, establishing security positions, while designated team members tackled the physical challenges. Impressive recovery, Harmon remarked quietly to Reynolds as they observed the team's initial progress. Wilson's taking point on security elements. Didn't expect that after his performance earlier. Reynolds nodded slightly. Defeat can be instructive when the subject possesses sufficient self-awareness. His Afghanistan experience makes him valuable for perimeter control. The initial stations tested basic military skills, rope climbing, wall scaling, and equipment transport. The recruits performed adequately their Buddy-S training, proving sufficient for these fundamental requirements. Their confidence began recovering as they demonstrated competence in familiar areas. However, the scenarios became progressively more complex as they advanced through the course. At the third station, they encountered a simulated ambush requiring immediate tactical response and casualty evacuation under fire. Their reactions revealed the limitations of their training and experience. Several recruits froze initially, unsure how to respond to the unexpected contact. Others reacted impulsively, breaking formation and compromising their unit's defensive posture. The chaos lasted nearly 2 minutes before Collins managed to restore order and coordinate an effective response to the simulated threat. Predictable fragmentation under initial pressure. Reynolds noted recording observations on her tablet. Collins shows recovery capability, but delayed command assertion. Harmon watched the team struggle through the ambush, scenario memories surfacing from his own early operations. We were no different at their stage. Operation Eagle Claw in 80 failed for similar reasons. Excellent individual operators without sufficient integrated training. Reynolds glanced at her mentor. Eagle Claw, the failed Iranian hostage rescue mission, represented a pivotal moment in special operations history that had led to the creation of Joint Special Operations Command. The reference wasn't casual. Harmon was reminding her that even elite units face catastrophic learning curves. The fourth scenario presented a navigation challenge requiring the team to locate and secure a hidden objective using only basic map and compass techniques. Electronic devices were prohibited, forcing them to rely on fundamental skills that many had neglected in favor of GPS technology. Martinez demonstrated unexpected expertise in this area, his civilian background in outdoor recreation providing advantages that military training had not emphasized. He guided the team successfully through the navigation requirements, earning respect from his peers and recognition for contributing unique capabilities to their collective effort. Martinez has natural spatial intelligence, Reynolds observed, potential for specialized reconnaissance roles. As the recruits approached the final stations, fatigue began affecting their performance. The physical demands of the course combined with stress from constant evaluation tested their endurance and mental resilience. Some recruits began showing signs of strain, while others found reserves of determination they had not known they possessed. Reynolds' constant observation maintained pressure on the team while providing valuable intelligence about each individual's character and potential. She noted who remained calm under stress, who provided support to struggling teammates, and who demonstrated natural leadership qualities when faced with challenging circumstances. The recruits' transformation continued throughout the exercise, their understanding of military service evolving beyond their previous limited experience and assumptions. The final scenario proved the most challenging, yet the recruits found themselves facing a simulated hostage rescue situation requiring precise coordination, tactical decision-making, and flawless execution under extreme time pressure. The setup included multiple entry points, civilian role players, and armed opposition forces using non-lethal training and ammunition. Reynolds had positioned herself as the primary observer for this exercise, her vantage point allowing complete surveillance of the team's performance. She noted their planning process, role assignments, and individual stress responses as they prepared for the most complex challenge of their assessment. Collins gathered his team for a quick briefing, their 45-minute time limit now reduced to less than 10 minutes remaining. The pressure was mounting, and several recruits showed visible signs of anxiety. Their earlier confidence had been replaced by growing awareness of their limitations and inexperience. Okay, we need to breach simultaneously from 3 points. Collins explained, sketching a rough diagram in the dirt. Martinez and Wilson take the back entrance. Baker and Anderson hit the side window. The rest of us go through the front door. Questions. The plan demonstrated basic tactical thinking, but lacked the sophistication that actual special operations would require. Reynolds observed their preparation with professional interest, noting both strengths and critical weaknesses in their approach to complex problem-solving under pressure. The team moved into position, their movements more cautious now than at the beginning of the course. They had learned respect for the scenarios Reynolds designed, understanding that each challenge tested capabilities they were still developing. The execution began promisingly, with all three teams reaching their assigned positions simultaneously. However, complications arose immediately as the simulated hostiles proved more aggressive and tactically sophisticated than the recruits had anticipated. Their simple plan quickly fell apart under unexpected resistance. Anderson's team encountered heavy opposition at the side entrance, forcing them to take cover and reassess their approach. Meanwhile, Martinez and Wilson discovered their assigned entry point was blocked, requiring improvised solutions that their limited training had not prepared them to handle effectively. Collins' main assault team made initial progress, but soon found themselves pinned down by crossfire from multiple directions. The scenario designers had created a situation requiring adaptive thinking and coordinated responses that exceeded the recruits' current capabilities. Though they continued fighting to complete their mission, Reynolds watched the chaos unfold with analytical detachment. Her evaluation focused on individual reactions to unexpected adversity rather than simple success or failure. Some recruits demonstrated resilience in creative problem-solving, while others became overwhelmed by the complexity of their situation. After several minutes of struggle, it became clear that the recruits could not complete the scenario within their time constraints using conventional approaches. Their tactical knowledge proved insufficient for the sophisticated challenge they faced. Despite their determination and physical courage, Collins made a critical decision that revealed genuine leadership potential. Instead of continuing futile resistance, he called for tactical withdrawal and regrouping. "Fall back to Rally Point Alpha," he commanded through his communication device. "We need to reassess and adapt our approach." The team executed an organized withdrawal, maintaining fire discipline and mutual support despite their tactical failure. Their ability to retreat effectively under pressure demonstrated military bearing and unit cohesion that impressed Reynolds. "Significant development from Collins," she noted to Harmon. "Recognizing tactical inadequacy and preserving force capability instead of pursuing a failed approach." Harmon nodded approvingly. "The hallmark of mature command judgment. Better to withdraw and reassess than sustain unnecessary casualties through pride." During their regrouping phase, Martinez proposed an unconventional solution. "What if we create a diversion here?" he suggested, pointing to a section of the facility that appeared heavily guarded, while a small team infiltrates from an unexpected direction. He indicated a ventilation shaft on the facility's roof that appeared unguarded but difficult to access. The plan required significant risk and precise timing, but offered their only realistic chance of mission success within the remaining time. Collins weighed the options quickly, recognizing that conventional approaches had already failed and desperate situations demanded innovative thinking. Reynolds observed their planning discussion with growing interest. The recruits were demonstrating exactly the kind of adaptive thinking that special operations required, though their execution would determine whether they possessed the skills to implement their tactical insights effectively. With less than 3 minutes remaining, the team committed to Martinez's plan. Baker and Wilson created a noisy diversion at the front entrance, while Collins, Johnson, and Martinez attempted infiltration through the unguarded ventilation shaft. The remaining team members provided covering fire and communication support. The desperate gambit succeeded partially. The diversion drew opposition forces away from the target area, allowing the infiltration team to reach the simulated hostages. However, their extraction attempt triggered alarms and brought immediate response from hostile forces throughout the facility. Time expired with the mission incomplete, but significant progress achieved through innovative thinking and coordinated teamwork. The recruits had demonstrated growth throughout the exercise, learning to adapt and overcome obstacles that initially seemed insurmountable. Their failure was instructive rather than shameful. Reynolds called halt to the exercise as the timer reached 0. The recruits assembled in formation, their uniforms dirty and sweat-stained from the intensive challenges they had faced. Their expressions showed exhaustion, mixed with pride at having pushed themselves beyond previous limitations. "Gather around," Reynolds commanded her tone, suggesting important information was about to be shared. The recruits formed a semicircle, their attention focused entirely on their instructor as they awaited feedback on their performance and insights into their future training requirements. Reynolds studied the exhausted faces before her, noting the fundamental transformation that had occurred over the past several hours. The cocky recruits from the mess hall had been replaced by sobered young sailors who now understood the vast difference between basic military training and actual special operations capabilities. "Before I provide feedback on your performance," Reynolds began, "I want to acknowledge your adaptation throughout today's assessment. You began as individuals and finished as the beginnings of a functional team. That transition is the foundation of everything we do in naval special warfare." The recruit stood slightly taller at this modest praise, recognizing that Reynolds did not offer commendation lightly. "Your final scenario was designed to be impossible with your current training level." She continued, surprising them with her candor. "It replicated a compound clearance operation in Raqqa that required a 16-man SEAL team with air support to execute successfully. Your partial success through adaptive planning demonstrates potential." This revelation seemed to ease some of the disappointment the recruits felt at their failure. The context transformed their perception from defeat to relative achievement against impossible odds. Captain Harmon stepped forward, his weathered face solemn as he addressed the group. "Every special operations unit in history has been defined not by their victories but by how they respond to failure. Operation Eagle Claw in 1980 was a catastrophic failure that led to the creation of our modern Special Operations Command structure. We learn more from our defeats than our successes." The historical reference resonated with the recruits, particularly those with military family backgrounds, who recognized the significance of the failed Iranian hostage rescue mission Harmon mentioned. "Lieutenant Reynolds will now provide individual assessments," Harmon concluded, stepping back to allow the primary instructor to continue. Reynolds consulted her tablet, though she hardly needed the reference. Her observational skills and memory had cataloged each recruit's performance in meticulous detail. "Recruit Martinez," she began, "your navigation expertise and innovative tactical thinking suggest aptitude for reconnaissance operations. Your willingness to propose unconventional solutions under pressure indicates the mental flexibility required for special mission planning." Martinez stood straighter, clearly pleased by the recognition. Though he remained at attention, praise from a combat-proven operator carried weight that no amount of basic training commendation could match. His civilian outdoor experience had finally proved valuable in a military context. "Recruit Collins," Reynolds continued, "your leadership during crisis scenarios showed promise, particularly your decision to withdraw and regroup when initial plans failed. However, your tactical planning needs significant development before you could be considered for advanced training. You relied on conventional approaches that didn't account for enemy adaptability." Collins nodded grimly, understanding that his earlier arrogance had been noted and evaluated along with his military performance. The lesson about judging people by appearances had been delivered with surgical precision through practical demonstration rather than lecture. "Recruit Wilson," Reynolds said, turning her attention to the former Army Ranger. The room seemed to grow quieter as everyone remembered his dismissive comments from the mess hall. "Your perimeter security instincts are well developed from your Afghanistan experience. Your rapid adaptation after initial assessment demonstrates professional maturity." Wilson maintained his military bearing, but the slight relaxation in his shoulders revealed relief that Reynolds had focused on his performance rather than his earlier disrespect. Reynolds continued through each recruit, highlighting specific strengths and development areas with remarkable precision. Her observations proved remarkably detailed, demonstrating the analytical skills that special operations demanded. The recruits absorbed her assessment with the seriousness of men who had gained newfound respect for their instructor's expertise. "All of you demonstrated courage and determination throughout today's challenges," Reynolds acknowledged. "However, courage without competence can be dangerous in special operations environments. The scenarios you face today represent simplified versions of actual mission requirements." The recruits absorbed this information soberly, realizing that their struggles with basic tactical problems indicated how unprepared they were for real special operations work. Their respect for Reynolds' achievements grew even deeper as they understood the complexity of her actual responsibilities. As the formal assessment concluded, Reynolds granted the recruits a 30-minute break before the final phase of the day's evaluation. The young men dispersed to the canteen area, collapsing onto benches with water bottles and protein bars. "What do you make of Lieutenant Reynolds?" Martinez asked quietly once they were alone. The question had been hovering in everyone's mind since the morning's combat demonstration. Wilson rubbed his neck where Reynolds' chokehold had nearly rendered him unconscious. "She's not like any officer I've encountered. Those weren't standard Navy combat techniques. The way she took down Anderson." Baker added that was Systema, Russian Special Forces methodology. "I trained with a Spetsnaz instructor once who used similar joint manipulations." Collins leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. "My father mentioned a program last year. Something classified about integrating women into special operations units. Said the Pentagon had invested millions in identifying and training female candidates who could meet the physical standards." "You think Reynolds is part of that program?" Martinez asked. "I think Reynolds is that program," Collins replied. "Did you see her eyes during the combat assessment? That wasn't training. She's seen actual combat." The others considered this possibility in silence. Their earlier assumptions about Reynolds' capabilities now seemed not just wrong but embarrassingly naive. Wilson stared at his hands for a moment before speaking. "In Kandahar 2018, our unit took heavy fire during a village clearing region. Our medic, Jamie Sullivan, 19 years old, 5'0", carried our wounded sergeant through active gunfire to the extraction point. Saved his life. I watched her apply a tourniquet and return fire simultaneously." He looked up at his companions. "I should have known better than to judge Lieutenant Reynolds by appearance." The admission from the previously skeptical Wilson carried significant weight with the group. His combat experience had earned him respect among the recruits, and his reassessment of Reynolds influenced their collective perspective. "What do you think happens next?" Anderson asked, changing the subject. "More evaluation," Martinez guessed. "But I'm betting it gets worse before it gets better." From a distance, Harmon and Reynolds observed the recruits' interaction, reading their body language and group dynamics with practiced ease. "They're reassessing their assumptions," Harmon noted with satisfaction. "Wilson's experience in Afghanistan is proving valuable for the group's adaptation." Reynolds nodded slightly. "The lesson is more effective when they teach themselves." As the break concluded, the recruits returned to the training area with visibly different attitudes than they had shown that morning. The arrogance and casual dismissal of Reynolds' authority had been replaced by attentive respect, bordering on wariness. Reynolds stood before them, flanked by Captain Harmon and Chief Rodriguez. "Your final evaluation today will test your ability to function under the most challenging circumstances special operators face. Incomplete intelligence, limited resources, and mission parameters that change without warning." She gestured toward a new training environment that had been prepared during their break. Unlike the previous obstacle course, this scenario featured an elaborate mock-up of a dense urban environment reminiscent of a Middle Eastern city center. "This is what we call the Mogadishu Mile," Reynolds explained, referencing the infamous 1993 operation where American Special Forces found themselves in an unexpected urban battle in Somalia. "Your objective is to locate and extract a high-value intelligence asset while evading numerically superior hostile forces. You have limited ammunition, no air support, and minimal intelligence on enemy positions." The gravity of the scenario was not lost on the recruits. Operation Gothic Serpent, popularly known through the book and film Black Hawk Down, represented one of the most challenging urban combat situations American Special Forces had faced. The mission had resulted in 18 American casualties and became a watershed moment in special operations history. "You'll be issued standard tactical gear." Reynolds continued, gesturing towards equipment laid out on nearby tables. "M4 carbines with simulated ammunition, tactical communications gear, and basic medical supplies. Your insertion point is here." She indicated an alleyway at the corner of the mock city. "Your extraction point will be revealed once you've secured the intelligence asset." The scenario design was significantly more sophisticated than anything the recruits had faced in previous training. It simulated the unpredictability and complex threat environment of actual special operations missions, rather than the controlled parameters of conventional military exercises. Captain Harmon will provide historical context before you begin, Reynolds concluded, stepping aside for her senior officer. Harmon moved forward, his weathered face solemn as he addressed the recruits. In October 1993, a Special Operations Task Force consisting of Delta Force Rangers and SEALs conducted a raid in Mogadishu to capture lieutenants of warlord Mohammed Farah Aidid. What was planned as a 1-hour operation turned into a 17-hour urban battle against hundreds of militia fighters. The recruits listened intently, recognizing that Harmon was sharing professional insight rather than academic history. I was there as a junior officer. Harmon revealed surprising many of the recruits who hadn't realized his combat experience extended back 3 decades. The mission failed because we underestimated the operational environment, overestimated our technological advantages, and failed to adapt when initial plans collapsed. 18 Americans died. The lesson was paid for in blood. The sobering reality of Harmon's personal connection to the historical operation transformed the training scenario from abstract exercise to meaningful preparation for the life-or-death situations the recruits aspired to face. Lieutenant Reynolds participated in a similar operation in Syria in 2019. Harmon continued revealing information that none of the recruits had known. Her 8-person team successfully extracted 3 intelligence officers from Raqqa while under fire from ISIS fighters. She'll evaluate your performance based on actual combat experience, not theoretical tactics. This revelation sent a ripple of surprised glances among the recruits. Reynolds' combat credentials had just been established by a credible source, a veteran SEAL captain with first-hand knowledge. The casual dismissal of her capabilities in the mess hall now seemed not just inappropriate, but professionally embarrassing. "You have 45 minutes to plan and execute your operation," Reynolds announced, activating the timer on her tablet. "Begin now." The recruits gathered quickly, their earlier interpersonal dynamics transformed by the day's experiences. Collins, who had emerged as the natural leader, organized them into a planning circle. "Martinez, you've got the best tactical mind. I want your assessment on approach routes." Collins delegated, demonstrating a newfound humility in recognizing his teammates' strengths. "Wilson, your Afghanistan experience makes you our urban warfare expert. What should we expect?" The team's planning process revealed significant maturation from their earlier efforts. They considered multiple contingencies, established clear communication protocols, and assigned roles based on demonstrated abilities rather than ego or seniority. Reynolds observed their preparation with professional interest, noting the accelerated team development that often emerged under proper instruction and credible leadership. Harmon stood beside her, his expression revealing satisfaction in the recruits' progress. "They're starting to think like operators rather than individual combatants," Harmon observed quietly. "Collins has potential with proper mentorship." Reynolds nodded slightly. "His tactical instincts need refinement, but his personnel management has improved significantly since this morning." As the planning phase concluded, the recruits moved toward their equipment tables, checking weapons and communication gear with newfound seriousness. Their earlier casual confidence had been replaced by the focused preparation that characterized actual special operators preparing for deployment. Wilson approached Collins as they prepared to move out. "I was wrong this morning," he said quietly. "About Reynolds. About female operators in general." Collins nodded, checking his tactical vest. "We were all wrong. That's the point of training. To correct misconceptions before they get you killed in the field." The brief exchange revealed the profound attitudinal shift that had occurred in just a few hours. The casual sexism and dismissal of Reynolds' capabilities had been thoroughly dismantled by direct demonstration and credible information. As the recruits prepared to enter the urban training environment, Reynolds moved to a control station where she could monitor their progress through cameras positioned throughout the mock city. The scenario would test not just their tactical abilities, but their capacity to adapt and overcome unexpected challenges, the true hallmark of special operations capability. "They're still going to fail," Reynolds noted matter-of-factly to Harmon as they watched the team begin their approach to the insertion point. "The scenario is designed beyond their current capabilities." Harmon's weathered face revealed a slight smile. "Sometimes the most important lessons come from well-managed failure." The recruits moved into the simulated urban environment with careful coordination, demonstrating basic tactical movement techniques they had learned during BODIS training. Their approach showed textbook small unit tactics, maintaining security communicating through hand signals, and securing each segment of their route before advancing. However, the scenario quickly introduced complications beyond their experience level. Simulated civilian personnel appeared unexpectedly, forcing rapid identification of potential threats versus non-combatants. Pre-recorded urban sounds, vehicles conversations, distant gunfire, created the sensory complexity of actual combat environments that classroom training couldn't replicate. Wilson's experience in Afghanistan proved valuable as he guided the team through the first phase of their operation. His familiarity with urban movement techniques and threat identification helped them avoid several potential ambush positions. Wilson's adapting his Ranger training effectively, Reynolds noted watching their progress on the monitors. His dismissal of female operators likely stemmed from protective instincts rather than genuine prejudice. Harmon nodded. Most resistance comes from misguided protective impulses rather than actual discrimination. Show them a woman can not only survive, but excel in combat, and the resistance typically dissolves. As the team penetrated deeper into the urban environment, they encountered the first simulated enemy contact, instructors playing the role of hostile militia with non-lethal training weapons. The recruits responded with disciplined fire and movement demonstrating solid fundamentals, but lacking the advanced techniques that experienced operators would employ. Reynolds watched their response critically, noting both strengths and deficiencies. Basic fire discipline is acceptable, but they're not maximizing cover effectively. Anderson's exposing his position unnecessarily. The scenario progressively increased in difficulty as the team approached the building where their intelligence asset was supposedly held. The opposition forces increased in number and tactical sophistication, pushing the recruits beyond their training and experience. Collins organized his team for the building assault, demonstrating improved tactical planning from their earlier exercise. Martinez Wilson, you'll breach from the rear entrance. Baker Thomas, secure our exit route. The rest of us will enter through the main entrance once you're in position. The plan reflected basic special operations methodology, but lacked the detailed contingency planning and precision timing that actual missions would require. Reynolds watched with professional detachment, knowing the coming phase would reveal the true limits of their capabilities. As the assault phase began, unexpected complications quickly emerged. Exactly as Reynolds had designed some, the rear entrance was blocked by a simulated explosion. Communications between the teams deteriorated due to simulated jamming. Opposition forces appeared in unexpected locations with superior tactical positioning. The carefully planned operation began to unravel under pressure, forcing the recruits to adapt to rapidly changing circumstances without adequate preparation or experience. Some responded with initiative and creativity, while others reverted to rigid adherence to now irrelevant plans. Reynolds monitored their responses closely, particularly interested in how they handled the deteriorating tactical situation. The difference between operators and conventional forces isn't success in perfect conditions, she explained to Harmon. It's adaptation to catastrophic plan failure. The scenario reached its crisis point as the recruits found themselves effectively surrounded by opposition forces, cut off from their extraction route, and running low on simulated ammunition. Their mission objective remained unaccomplished, and the 45-minute time limit approached its conclusion. Collins faced the pivotal leadership moment that Reynolds had deliberately engineered, the realization that the mission could not be accomplished with available resources and capabilities. His decision would reveal whether he had truly absorbed the day's lessons about tactical humility and adaptive leadership. After a brief consultation with his team leaders, Collins made the call that distinguished developing special operators from reckless amateurs. All elements, this is actual. We are executing immediate withdrawal. Mission abort priority is team extraction intact. Acknowledge. The decision to prioritize personnel safety over mission accomplishment when faced with overwhelming opposition demonstrated the tactical maturity that Reynolds had been evaluating throughout the day. The recruits executed their withdrawal with surprising discipline, maintaining mutual security and communication despite the chaotic scenario. As they emerged from the training environment, sweating and exhausted, but professionally satisfied with their orderly retreat, they found Reynolds and Harmon waiting at the extraction point. Time expired, Reynolds announced, stopping the timer on her tablet. Final exercise concluded. The recruits assembled in formation, their expressions reflecting the complex mixture of disappointment at mission failure and pride in their improved performance as a unit. They awaited Reynolds' assessment with the respectful attention they had denied her that morning. "Your mission was unsuccessful," Reynolds stated matter-of-factly. "The intelligence asset remained unsecured, and you expended 87% of your ammunition resources before withdrawal." The blunt assessment hung in the air for a moment before Reynolds continued. "However, you made the correct tactical decision to abort rather than pursue an impossible objective. In special operations, recognizing mission infeasibility is as important as accomplishing objectives. You preserved your most valuable resource, the team itself." This unexpected commendation shifted the recruits' perspective on their performance. What had felt like failure was being framed as appropriate tactical judgment by an experienced operator. "The scenario you faced was based on an actual operation in Raqqa in 2019, Reynolds revealed. "A SEAL element encountered similar complications and made the same decision you did: tactical withdrawal and mission recalibration. They returned 3 days later with additional resources and successfully accomplished their objective." The comparison to an actual combat operation elevated the training scenario from abstract exercise to relevant professional development. The recruits stood slightly taller, recognizing that their decision-making process had aligned with real-world special operations methodology. Captain Harmon stepped forward, his weathered face serious as he addressed the group. "In my 38 years of naval special warfare experience, I've seen more operators killed through pride than enemy action. The willingness to acknowledge tactical limitations and adapt accordingly is what separates professionals from casualties." The recruits absorbed this wisdom from a combat veteran whose experience spanned from Cold War operations to the global war on terror. Harmon's credibility lent significant weight to the day's lessons about adaptability and tactical humility. "Tomorrow at Oro 700, you'll begin specialized tactical training," Reynolds concluded. "Today was evaluation. Tomorrow your real development begins." Dismissed. As the exhausted recruits filed toward the barracks, their conversations revealed the profound transformation that had occurred in their understanding of special operations requirements and their assessment of Lieutenant Reynolds. "She's the real deal," Wilson admitted quietly to Martinez. "The way she designed that scenario, that wasn't theoretical. She's been there." Martinez nodded. "Changes everything we thought we knew, doesn't it?" From their observation position, Reynolds and Harmon watched the recruits depart their professional assessment, continuing even after the formal evaluation had concluded. "Significant attitude evolution in under 12 hours, Reynolds noted. "Collins and Wilson show particular developmental potential." Harmon's weathered face creased in a rare smile. "Reminds me of another promising officer who upended everyone's expectations." He glanced sideways at his protege. "The DevGru commander called while you were running the urban exercise. The Team 6 evaluation board has approved your transfer request." Reynolds maintained her professional composure, though the slight straightening of her posture revealed the significance of this news. SEAL Team 6, officially known as Naval Special Warfare Development Group, or DevGru, represented the absolute pinnacle of special operations capability. Her acceptance would make her the first woman to join the military's most elite counterterrorism unit. "Congratulations, Lieutenant," Harmon said quietly. "You've earned it through performance, not politics. Your deployment orders will arrive next week." Reynolds allowed herself a momentary smile, the culmination of a journey that had required her to be twice as good as her male counterparts to receive half the recognition. "Thank you for your advocacy, Captain, and for today's opportunity." Harmon nodded, understanding the reference to the day's demonstration. "Sometimes the most effective argument isn't made with words." He glanced toward the departing recruits. "They'll remember this day for their entire careers, particularly Wilson." As the sun began its descent toward the Pacific horizon, casting long shadows across Naval Base Coronado, Lieutenant Catherine Reynolds gathered her evaluation materials and prepared for tomorrow's training. Her thoughts were already shifting toward the classified deployment that awaited her with DevGru. The real-world operations where the skills she had demonstrated today would mean the difference between mission success and failure, between team survival and casualties. For the recruits, today had been a transformative experience in their understanding of special operations capabilities and their own limitations. For Reynolds, it represented another step in a journey to prove that combat effectiveness had nothing to do with gender and everything to do with training, determination, and tactical judgment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to serve their country. Armed now with realistic understanding of what such service truly required, both instructors and recruits prepared to continue the endless process of development that defined America's special operations community. Dawn broke over Naval Base Coronado with the sharp clarity that characterized Southern California mornings. The training facility stood silent and expectant as the first golden rays illuminated the complex urban warfare environment where yesterday's final exercise had unfolded. At precisely 0600 an hour before the recruits were scheduled to arrive, Lieutenant Reynolds entered the Tactical Operations Center. Captain Harmon was already present, reviewing after-action reports from the previous day's evaluation on a secure terminal. "Morning, Lieutenant," Harmon acknowledged without looking up. "Sleep well." "4 hours, sir, standard." Reynolds placed her tablet on the planning table, bringing up detailed performance metrics for each recruit. "I've designed today's training evolution based on yesterday's assessment. Focus on tactical decision-making under intelligence limitations." Harmon turned from his terminal, studying his protege with the evaluative eye of a mentor who had guided her development for years. "The DevGru assignment will deploy in 3 weeks. Commander Phillips wants you for Operation Sentinel." Reynolds paused momentarily. Operation Sentinel was a classified counterterrorism mission targeting high-level ISIS leadership that had escaped Syria during the territorial collapse of the Caliphate. The assignment represented the highest level of operational trust. "Today will be my last training rotation with these recruits." Reynolds realized, her tone remaining professional despite the significance of the transition. Harmon nodded. "Which is why I've authorized the full disclosure protocol for this afternoon's debriefing. They've earned the truth about who's been training them." Reynolds absorbed this decision without visible reaction, though its importance wasn't lost on her. The classified nature of Project Athena and her operational history had been closely guarded from most naval personnel, including the recruits she'd been evaluating. "Will Captain Michaels be present?" she asked, referencing the commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare Group 1, the administrative head of West Coast SEAL teams, along with Commander Sullivan from SOCOM. Harmon confirmed. "Sullivan was instrumental in getting Athena approved by Joint Chiefs. He wants to observe the results personally." The presence of such senior leadership underscored the significance of today's training evolution. Project Athena represented a controversial shift in special operations doctrine, the integration of qualified women into direct combat roles previously restricted to men. Reynolds' success or failure would influence military policy for decades to come. "The recruits arrive in 57 minutes, Reynolds noted, redirecting the conversation to immediate priorities. "Chief Rodriguez has prepared the advanced tactical equipment for this morning's evolution." Harmon recognized his protege's characteristic focus, the ability to compartmentalize future implications and maintain absolute concentration on present requirements. That mental discipline had carried her through challenges that eliminated candidates with superior physical attributes, but weaker psychological resilience. "I'll brief Captain Michaels on yesterday's assessment," Harmon offered. "You focus on final preparation." Reynolds nodded and moved toward the equipment bay, her mind already mapping the day's training scenarios and evaluation metrics. Her imminent DevGru deployment represented personal achievement, but today's responsibility remained unchanged, transforming promising candidates into professionals capable of operating at the highest levels of military specialization. At precisely 0700, the 15 recruits assembled on the training ground, their expressions revealing both fatigue from yesterday's grueling assessment and eager anticipation for continued development. Their formation displayed noticeably improved discipline from the previous morning, unconscious evidence of the respect they'd developed for their instructors. Reynolds stood before them, her posture exemplifying the military precision she demanded from others. "Today's evolution focuses on advanced tactical operations under complex threat conditions," she announced without preamble. "You'll be utilizing specialized equipment and modified ROE protocols not covered in standard BUDS training." Chief Rodriguez directed the recruits to equipment tables, where tactical gear significantly more sophisticated than yesterday's had been arranged. Each station contained plate carriers with advanced composite armor, modified M4 carbines with specialized optics and suppression systems, tactical communication headsets with encrypted channels, and night vision equipment rarely issued below special operations units. This is SOCOM-level gear, Wilson observed quietly to Collins as they examined the equipment. Regular SEAL teams don't even get this kit until specialized deployment authorization. Collins nodded, recognizing the significance of being granted access to such advanced systems. Yesterday wasn't just evaluation. They're fast-tracking us for something specific. The perceptive observation revealed Collins's growing tactical awareness, the ability to interpret operational indicators beyond explicit information. Reynolds had noted this aptitude in her assessment, marking him as a potential future team leader with proper development. You'll be divided into 3 fire teams, Reynolds continued once the recruits had familiarized themselves with the equipment. Each team will face a distinct tactical challenge requiring specialized approaches. Team leaders are Collins, Wilson, and Martinez. The selection of these 3 particular recruits for leadership roles validated their performance in yesterday's evaluation and signaled Reynolds' assessment of their developmental potential. The other recruits accepted the designation without complaint, further evidence of the unit cohesion developing under proper guidance. The scenario is a complex hostage extraction from a fortified compound with multiple hostile elements, Reynolds explained, activating a tactical display showing a detailed 3-dimensional representation of the training environment. Intelligence is fragmentary and potentially compromised. Environmental conditions include limited visibility, civilian presence, and communication restrictions. The scenario description suggested operational complexity significantly beyond yesterday's already challenging exercise. Reynolds was deliberately pushing the recruits beyond conventional training parameters into the realm of actual special operations conditions. Captain Harmon will provide mission context before you deploy, Reynolds concluded, yielding the briefing position to her senior officer. Harmon stepped forward, his weathered features solemn as he addressed the recruits. In 1993, while conducting operations in Somalia, my SEAL team encountered a situation similar to today's scenario. Our intelligence proved catastrophically incomplete. What we believed was a single high-value target with minimal protection turned out to be a reinforced militia position with sophisticated defensive preparations. The personal combat reference immediately captured the recruits' complete attention. Harmon rarely shared operational details from his extensive career, making this disclosure particularly significant. We lost 3 operators attempting a direct assault approach. Harmon continued, his voice carrying the weight of command responsibility for lives lost under his leadership. The mission failed because we committed to initial intelligence without adaptive reconnaissance and contingency development. The sobering reality of combat consequences transformed the training scenario from abstract exercise to life-saving preparation. The recruits' expressions reflected newfound gravity about the day's evolution. Lieutenant Reynolds will be evaluating your performance against operational standards, not training metrics, Harmon concluded. The difference is measured in survivability, not scoring points. With that stark framing, he returned the briefing to Reynolds, who immediately divided the recruits into their assigned teams and provided specific mission parameters. Each team received distinct operational challenges that would require specialized approaches rather than standardized tactics. You have 30 minutes for planning and equipment preparation, Reynolds announced. Deployment begins at 0800 precisely. The recruits moved immediately to their planning stations, the designated team leaders organizing their units with noticeably improved efficiency compared to yesterday's evolution. Collins, Wilson, and Martinez each demonstrated distinct leadership styles reflective of their backgrounds and personalities, but all maintained the professional focus that characterized developing special operators. Reynolds observed their preparation with analytical precision, noting both procedural compliance and adaptive innovation. Her evaluation extended beyond textbook methodology to identify the creative problem-solving that distinguished exceptional operators from merely competent ones. Collins is implementing the tactical withdrawal lesson effectively, she noted to Harmon as they observed the planning phase. His contingency development shows significant maturation since yesterday. Harmon nodded. Martinez's reconnaissance prioritization indicates natural special operations instincts. He's planning intelligence verification before commitment. As the planning phase concluded, the teams moved toward their deployment positions, conducting final equipment checks and communication protocol verification. Their movements displayed the deliberate efficiency that characterized professional military units. Wasted motion eliminated through training and discipline. Reynolds and Harmon relocated to the Tactical Operations Center, where they could monitor all three teams simultaneously through the integrated surveillance system. The facility mirrored actual combat operations centers, used for mission oversight, providing comprehensive situational awareness while testing the team's ability to function with minimal direct supervision. At precisely 0800, Reynolds activated the scenario. All teams' mission is live. Execute your operations plan. The three teams deployed into the training environment with noticeably improved tactical movement compared to yesterday's exercise. Their formation, spacing, security protocols, and communication discipline reflected rapid learning curve acceleration under proper instruction. Team 1, led by Collins, approached their objective using terrain features for concealment while maintaining continuous reconnaissance. Team 2, under Wilson's command, established a tactical observation post before attempting approach. Team 3, with Martinez directing, implemented a diversionary element while maneuvering their main force from an unexpected direction. Distinct methodological approaches, Reynolds noted as she monitored the operations. Each leader adapting to specific terrain and intelligence limitations rather than applying standardized tactics. Harmon observed the evolving scenario with professional interest. Wilson's Afghanistan experience shows in his urban movement techniques. Collins is demonstrating natural maritime special operations instincts despite his conventional military background. The scenario progressively introduced complications designed to test adaptive capability under pressure. Simulated intelligence failures, unexpected civilian presence, communication, disruption in superior opposing forces created the unpredictable complexity that characterized actual combat operations. Each team encountered distinct challenges requiring immediate tactical reassessment and operational modification. Some adapted effectively, while others struggled with the transitional decision-making that distinguished special operators from conventional forces. Team 2, under Wilson's leadership, demonstrated particular effectiveness in adapting to intelligence failure. When their primary insertion route proved compromised by unexpected opposition presence, Wilson immediately implemented his tertiary contingency plan rather than attempting to force the original approach. Wilson's combat experience provides significant advantage in ambiguity tolerance, Reynolds observed. He's comfortable abandoning planned approaches when conditions change. Team 1 encountered a simulated civilian presence that complicated their direct action plan. Collins demonstrated ethical decision-making by delaying his assault rather than risking non-combatant casualties despite the operational timeline pressure. Collins prioritized civilian protection over mission expediency, Harmon noted approvingly. Essential special operations judgment. Team 3 faced communications failure that isolated their elements during a critical phase. Martinez implemented prearranged visual signals that maintained operational coordination despite technological compromise, demonstrating the adaptive resourcefulness that specialized units required. Throughout the evolution, Reynolds and Harmon evaluated not just tactical effectiveness, but decision-making quality under pressure. Special operations selection focused less on physical performance metrics than on cognitive processing under extreme conditions. The ability to make optimal decisions with incomplete information and severe consequences. As the scenario approached its conclusion, all three teams faced the central challenge designed to test their operational maturity, a tactical situation where mission objectives could not be accomplished without unacceptable risk to their personnel. The moment represented the essential special operations decision point, recognizing when operational reality required mission abort rather than reckless commitment. Team 1, under Collins's command, correctly assessed the situation and implemented immediate withdrawal to establish a new tactical approach. Team 2, led by Wilson, similarly recognized the unfavorable conditions and executed a planned extraction to preserve force capability for future attempts. Team 3, with Martinez directing, initially attempted to force the objective, but quickly recognized the tactical infeasibility and implemented withdrawal protocols. All three teams made the correct strategic decision, Reynolds noted as the scenario concluded. Significant improvement from yesterday's assessment. Harmon nodded, professional satisfaction evident in his weathered features. They're beginning to think like operators rather than candidates. The essential transition in development. At precisely 1,000 hours, Reynolds terminated the scenario and directed all teams to return to the briefing area. The recruits assembled in formation, their expressions reflecting the intensive mental and physical demands of the morning's evolution. Secure your equipment for inspection, Reynolds instructed. Debriefing will commence at 1100 hours in the Tactical Operations Center. Team leaders prepare your after-action assessments. As the recruits moved to comply, Reynolds and Harmon conducted their final evaluation conference, comparing observations and formalizing their assessment of each candidate's performance and potential. Martinez demonstrates exceptional potential for reconnaissance specialization, Reynolds noted. His spatial intelligence and adaptive planning suggest natural aptitude for intelligence operations. Harmon nodded. Wilson's combat leadership is already partially developed from his Afghanistan deployments. With proper specialized training, he could be operational within 6 months. Collins shows strategic thinking beyond tactical application, Reynolds added, potential for future command development with appropriate mentorship. Their professional assessment continued through each recruit, identifying specific strengths, developmental requirements, and specialized role potential. The evaluation reflected the extraordinary depth of analysis that distinguished special operations selection from conventional military advancement. At 1100 hours precisely, the recruits assembled in the Tactical Operations Center, where they found not only Reynolds and Harmon, but several senior officers they didn't recognize. The presence of high-ranking leadership with the distinctive trident insignias of Naval Special Warfare Command created immediate tension in the room. "Attention on deck," Chief Rodriguez called as Captain Michaels, the commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare Group 1, entered the facility. The recruits snapped to attention, their posture reflecting the military discipline ingrained through months of intensive training. Captain Michaels, a legendary figure within the SEAL community with multiple combat deployments spanning 3 decades, surveyed the assembled candidates with evaluative precision. "At ease," he instructed after a moment. "Be seated." The recruits complied immediately, their expressions revealing the nervous anticipation that accompanied unexpected senior leadership presence. Such high-level attention typically indicated either exceptional opportunity or serious concern, neither possibility reducing the psychological pressure. "Before Lieutenant Reynolds provides your performance assessment," Captain Michaels began, "there's contextual information you require for proper understanding of these evaluation exercises." The unusual introduction immediately captured complete attention from the assembled recruits. Procedural modifications from standard training methodology suggested significant operational implications. "Lieutenant Reynolds will be departing this training rotation effective tomorrow," Michaels continued. "She has been selected for immediate deployment with Naval Special Warfare Development Group on classified operations." The announcement created visible reaction among the recruits. DevGru, unofficially known as SEAL Team 6, represented the absolute pinnacle of special operations capability within the U.S. military. Assignment to this unit was extraordinarily selective, with most career SEALs never receiving consideration despite exceptional service records. "What Captain Michaels is authorized to tell you," Harmon added, "is that Lieutenant Reynolds is not a standard SEAL instructor temporarily assigned to training rotation." Reynolds stood, her professional demeanor unchanged, despite being the subject of discussion. In 2015, Naval Special Operations Command initiated Project Athena, a classified program to identify and develop female candidates capable of meeting unmodified special operations standards. From 28 initial candidates, I was the sole graduate. The revelation created stunned silence throughout the room. The recruits processed this information against their initial assumptions about Reynolds from just 2 days earlier. The dramatic cognitive recalibration, exactly what the training evolution had been designed to create. Lieutenant Reynolds completed BUDS Class 347 under modified identity protocols. Harmon continued providing the operational context for this extraordinary disclosure. She subsequently served with SEAL Team 4 and SEAL Team 2, conducting 7 classified operations in Syria, Iraq, and undisclosed locations in North Africa. The operational resume outlined by Harmon represented combat experience exceeding most career SEALs, fundamentally altering the recruits' understanding of the officer who had been evaluating them. Her transfer to DevGru was approved yesterday by SOCOM Command based on operational performance and specialized capabilities. Captain Michaels added, establishing the merit-based nature of Reynolds' advancement. Reynolds maintained her characteristic professional composure as her classified background was revealed to the recruits who had casually dismissed her capabilities in the mess hall just 2 days earlier. Her expression revealed neither vindication nor pride, simply the focused attention of an operator concerned with mission requirements rather than personal recognition. Yesterday's assessment confirmed my initial evaluation. Reynolds stated, redirecting the briefing to its operational purpose. 3 candidates demonstrated exceptional potential for advanced special operations development. The room grew absolutely silent as the recruits awaited her selection. Advanced special operations development typically indicated accelerated training for specialized units rather than standard SEAL team assignment, a career-defining opportunity sought by every candidate. Recruit Martinez, Reynolds announced, your reconnaissance aptitude and adaptive decision-making indicate natural potential for specialized intelligence operations. You're being recommended for Advanced Scout Sniper School, followed by specialized training with Naval Special Warfare Intelligence Directorate. Martinez straightened in his chair, processing the extraordinary opportunity being presented. Scout Sniper qualification represented elite specialization even within the already selective SEAL community, opening operational pathways unavailable to general operators. Recruit Collins, Reynolds continued, your strategic thinking and personnel management capabilities suggest command potential beyond tactical operations. You're being recommended for Joint Special Operations Planning rotation following standard SEAL qualification. The specialized planning designation identified Collins for potential leadership development, the pathway to future special operations command roles rather than perpetual tactical deployment. His expression revealed recognition of this extraordinary vote of confidence in his capabilities. Recruit Wilson, Reynolds concluded, your adaptive tactical execution and previous combat experience provide advanced operational foundation. You're being recommended for immediate integration into Naval Special Warfare Advanced Training Group for specialized capabilities development. Wilson's selection represented perhaps the most direct combat application. The Advanced Training Group develops specialized assault capabilities beyond standard SEAL qualifications, focusing on maritime counterterrorism and specialized infiltration methodologies. The 3 selected recruits maintained professional composure despite the career-defining opportunities presented, their military discipline evident in their controlled reactions. The remaining candidates showed momentary disappointment but professional acceptance, the essential resilience that distinguished potential special operators. These recommendations require your acceptance, Captain Michaels clarified. Advanced specialization involves additional commitment requirements and performance standards beyond standard SEAL qualification. Without hesitation, Martinez, Collins, and Wilson each indicated their acceptance, recognizing the extraordinary opportunity being presented despite the increased demands it would impose. The remaining candidates will continue standard SEAL qualification pathways, Harmon added, ensuring those not selected understood their continued value to the Naval Special Warfare community. Today's evolution demonstrated significant potential in all 15 recruits. As the formal briefing concluded, Captain Michaels departed with his staff, leaving Reynolds, Harmon, and Chief Rodriguez with the recruits for final administrative instructions. The atmosphere transformed from formal military procedure to the more familiar professional interaction that characterized daily operations. Lieutenant Reynolds, Wilson said, breaking the momentary silence that followed the senior officer's departure, I owe you an apology for my comments in the mess hall. They were unprofessional and incorrect. Reynolds studied him briefly before responding. Your assessment was based on incomplete information, Recruit Wilson. That's a tactical liability we address through these exercises. Her response contained no personal resentment or vindictiveness, only the professional evaluation of an operational deficiency and its correction. The approach exemplified the emotional discipline that characterized elite operators. In Afghanistan, Wilson continued, my unit had a female combat medic, Specialist Amanda Kelly. During a village clearing operation that went sideways, she ran through active gunfire to drag our wounded point man to cover, then provided medical care while returning accurate fire from his weapon. Saved his life and probably the rest of us. The personal combat recollection revealed Wilson's evolved understanding, recognition that combat effectiveness had nothing to do with gender and everything to do with training courage and tactical judgment. The fundamental lesson of these exercises, Harmon interjected, is that operational capability isn't determined by conventional metrics. Special operations selection identifies effectiveness, potential, not demographic categories. The recruits nodded their understanding, having received this lesson through direct demonstration rather than theoretical instruction. Reynolds had proven her capabilities through performance rather than assertion, the definitive standard in military evaluation. Report tomorrow at 0700 for standard training rotation, Chief Rodriguez instructed, providing the administrative direction that concluded the day's activities. Lieutenant Reynolds has final remarks before dismissal. Reynolds stood before the recruits one last time, her posture embodying the military precision she had maintained throughout their training. The most dangerous tactical vulnerability isn't physical limitation or equipment failure, she stated, her voice carrying the authority of proven combat experience. It's assumption without verification, believing you understand a situation without proper reconnaissance. The lesson extended beyond combat application to the broader principle they had experienced directly, prejudging capabilities based on appearance or conventional expectations rather than demonstrated performance. In special operations, effectiveness is the only metric that matters, Reynolds concluded. Your ability to complete the mission and bring your team home safely transcends every other consideration. Remember that when you deploy. With those final words of operational wisdom, Reynolds dismissed the recruits. As they filed from the Tactical Operations Center, their conversations revealed the profound transformation in their understanding of military capability and professional assessment. She's the real deal, Collins remarked quietly to Martinez as they walked toward the barracks. Makes you wonder how many other assumptions we're carrying that could get us killed in the field. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. That's probably the most important lesson from this whole evolution. From the Tactical Operations Center doorway, Reynolds and Harmon watched the recruits depart, their professional evaluation continuing until the final moment of interaction. They've got potential, Reynolds acknowledged. Wilson, in particular, made significant conceptual advancement. Harmon nodded, his weathered features revealing satisfaction with the training evolution's outcomes. Mission accomplished, Lieutenant, both the explicit objectives and the implicit ones. Reynolds allowed herself a rare smile, acknowledgement of both operational success and personal vindication. In 3 days, she had transformed 15 recruits' understanding of combat capability through direct demonstration rather than theoretical instruction. DevGru deployment briefing is scheduled for 0900 tomorrow, Harmon noted, returning to immediate operational considerations. Commander Phillips requested your threat assessment on the Raqqa intelligence before formal mission planning begins. Reynolds nodded, her mind already transitioning to the classified deployment that represented the pinnacle of special operations responsibility. Today's training evolution had been personally significant, but tomorrow's mission planning would affect national security objectives and the lives of operators who would execute the operation. As the sun began its descent toward the Pacific horizon, casting long shadows across Naval Base Coronado, Lieutenant Catherine Reynolds gathered her evaluation materials and prepared for deployment. Behind her lay the transformed recruits whose understanding of military capability had been fundamentally altered through her instruction. Before her lay classified operations that would utilize her exceptional capabilities for national security objectives beyond public acknowledgement. In both realms, she had proven the essential truth at the heart of Project Athena, that combat effectiveness had nothing to do with gender and everything to do with training, courage, and tactical judgment. The lesson would echo through special operations development for decades to come, transforming not just military capability, but the fundamental understanding of human potential under the most demanding conditions imaginable. Lieutenant Reynolds, SEAL operator and pioneer, walked toward the future she had earned through performance rather than privilege, leaving behind recruits forever changed by the discovery of the hidden warrior among them.